we didn't have to go out to GitHub to get all the information first. Like before, I may want to change the user-friendly name. Once you're done modifying any settings on this page, click on Clone. And like before, we show up in the same tab with the repository open in SourceTree. Now, one of the options we had when we created this repository locally was to associate it with our GitHub repository. Initially, you might be thinking that simply pre-populates the origin reference to GitHub. And it does do that, but it also created the repository on GitHub for us as well. So if we hop back over to our web browser, make sure you refresh or reload your page, and then you should notice the repository we just created in SourceTree, but also available on GitHub. Of course, there's no source code yet, so it simply provides the standard instructions always provided by GitHub in an empty repository. But we don't need to follow any of these instructions since SourceTree hooked it up already for us. Let's head back over to SourceTree. Currently, SourceTree does not provide any way of editing files directly from the SourceTree app. Instead, we have the option to open Windows Explorer or to invoke a terminal. We already used the Open in Explorer option before. Let's try it the terminal. If you go to the top right-hand side of the screen, you should have a terminal option. Click on Terminal. In this case, this launches Git Bash, and we should be launched into the repository we just created. From here, we can open our text editor, Atom. Once Atom is open, you'll notice there really aren't many files here. There is a grayed-out.git folder, which is the internal Git repository, a concept we've covered before, but there's no actual files being managed by Git yet. So let's right-click and create a new file. Within our text editor, name your file. I'm going to start off with the standard readme.md file, with readme in all caps. Of course, since this is a brand new file, Atom highlights this in green. Great. Once you're done adding some content to this file, save your file in your text editor. Now, let's hop back over to SourceTree. SourceTree automatically refreshes every few seconds to look for updates to your working folder. In this case, it noticed the readme.md file, which is brand new, and it will be listed under a section called Unstaged Files. Like lots of programs, there are actually multiple ways of doing the same thing. We can select this file and simply drag and drop it into staged files. Then, once we're ready to make the commit, we can go down to the very bottom, which provides us a commit message text box. Our first commit in SourceTree. When you're done, click the Commit button. Great, there aren't any pending changes now since we committed the only changes that were pending to our Git repository. For the time being, we can click on the master branch to see our changes. Clicking on the master branch refreshes the panes so that SourceTree shows us an ongoing history of our commits in the repository. Of course, we only have one commit so far. Well, our commit is only on our local repository, so let's push up our change up to GitHub. Click on Push. That loads an option to allow us to choose what to push. I'm going to select the Push Master, which automatically populates the remote side master. And yes, we want to keep the item track checked. As I've mentioned before, tracking branches will associate themselves with their remote or local counterpart, allowing us to track changes between each side. Once you're ready, click on Push. Once everything is pushed up to GitHub, we should land back on our page showing our history. However, this time, if you look carefully, we have a new label associated, origin/master. So in addition to our local master, origin/master also points to the same commit. And let's verify this on GitHub. Return to your browser, and this time, either refresh your page or click on the name of your repository. Now, we should see our changes on GitHub. Indeed, we have our first commit and our README file. Let's try that process one more time. Since Atom is still open, we'll just jump directly to Atom. Atom will also refresh its status, noting that there are no changes. Let's add a new file. I'm going to create a file called changelog.md. Once you're done adding content to this file, save your changes. Since this is a markdown file, we can preview the changes. Use Ctrl-Shift-M to toggle the preview. All right, we can close that out. Now hop back over to SourceTree. When you're looking at your history view, if you have any changes, you'll have a notice at the very top that says Uncommitted Changes. If you select that, then the bottom part of SourceTree will update to allow us to make changes directly from our current view. I can select Stage All. If I had multiple changes, then more than one file would have made it into the Staged Files view. From this view, we have another way of doing commits. Click on the Commit button. That switches back over to the Commit view. We see that we have our changes in staged files. So let's bounce down to our commit text box, adding changelog. However, this time I want to do two operations at once. Since we have already pushed our changes up to GitHub and we're tracking on the current branch, master, we have the option to push changes immediately to origin master. Let's check that box first. Now when we click commit, our changes will be committed to our local repository and then pushed up to GitHub. Let's see if that actually worked. Hop back over to your web browser, and then refresh your browser's page. Great, our changelog.md file is located on GitHub as well. Welcome. In this video, we're going to walk through staging and unstaging files in our repository in GitHub. For now, we can close out our browser. We can come back to this later. Back in our SourceTree example repository, hop back over to Atom, which should still be open to that particular repository. Here, we have two files, changelog and README. Let's make a few more changes to each file. All right, playing around, save that file. Here I'll just put some ipsum lorem. Now that we have two files modified, let's return to SourceTree. Now we have both files listed in unstaged changes. You can see that we can select each item, and it will do a local compare since the last commit in our repository. I can simply stage the selected file. In this case, it moves up the changelog file, but leaves README behind. Or I can click on Stage All, which will get the rest of it. I can also unstage files. For example, you decide that you really don't want both files moving forward. We can unstage both files by clicking on Unstage All. As we covered before, we can drag and drop the file, and we can even selectively drag and drop back. For example, I'm not ready for changelog to move forward, so I